Now you've applied for the Outreachy initial application. What happens next? What do you do from submitting your application to being selected for the contribution phase? Today, we're going to be breaking down all of this and show you how to prepare. Quick recap if you are just joining. Outreachy is a pay remote open source internship program. In the previous video, about how to apply for the initial application. We'll talk about what open source software is, how Artistry is connected to this, then eligibility for the internship, and how to complete your initial application essays. Once you're past that, you submitted your application. The next phase is called the contribution phase. So, what even is a contribution? A contribution is something where you give some sort of support or you help out an open source project in some way. It could be improving process workflows, documentations, and in so many different ways. It is not just for programmers alone. And another thing about Outreachy itself is that it's not just for people that are experts. You don't need to be a guru. Newcomers are welcome. You get to experience what open source software is about and how you can contribute for the first time. So this contribution phase is a set period of time, usually 1 month, 4 weeks, and you get to make real contributions to open source projects before you are selected as an intern. It's a kind of like the filtering stage, and projects use this stage to see how you work, how you collaborate, and community engagement. It's showing your skills. You don't need to send a CV, there's no need for an interview. You use this period to show how your skills aligns to the project. It shows who you are, because open source is not just about, oh, you can do this project. How do you collaborate with other people that are working from different time zones, these mentors, the volunteers? It's also about your personality. Now, let's go over choosing a project. This is usually overwhelming. You're going to see lots of projects and then you have to pick some. I would say pick between one to two, but mostly focusing on one that you know that you have great strengths at. And this is where you would have to check the project description and then the skills and the experience level to the skills. This is an example of what I mean by the skill level. Each project will require a different level of experience with a particular skill. Experience levels are indicated with numbers. You're going to see that in the project skills list very soon. One, no knowledge required. Two, concepts. Three, you've experimented with it. Four, you are comfortable with it. And five, it's a challenge, means you can do it really, really well. Well, let's go to the project page. This is an example from one of the community's projects. What you would see is the project, the community name, and then the project title. A community can submit more than one project they would want contributors to work on. One, two, or three, it depends. And the intent selection for each project also depends on the community. Usually, when you have access to the project description, it will be here, and then there is also a community landing page that you will click and you will see the full details of the project description. Now, this is the skills section. Once you're going over the project, you go over the skills description and experience level. So you could use it to assess yourself and know if you can commit to contributing to this project. For the contribution phase, if you want to use it as a learning experience, that's also different. But now you're applying for the internship. So it's asking for Git, Skill, R Studio, R Markdown, GitHub, and R. And it also lists the impact on intern selection. Git, is it required? So it's required. Experience level is number three. Means you have experimented with it. And R Studio is the same thing. Preferred, it's not required, but your experience level is that you have experimented with it. It goes on. Let's choose something with more familiar programming skills. Okay, this one is short. Let's take, for example, this. Okay, is the organization name. And then this is the project. For example, create a blog post series, fundamental of data visualization. Okay. And the skills description, Python for data science, technical writing, data visualization. And then you see the impact. Is it required, preferred, nice to have? So if it's not nice to have, means it's not compulsory, it's not required for the project. Or if you have it, that gives you an edge, which is really nice. And then the experience level is also you've experimented with it. If you have it, it's nice you experimented with it. So you can see the past project list, it's long. I can go over there. If you go through the past project page, or if you're currently in the contribution phase, you're going through the project list, it's a lot. And that's why I say it's overwhelming. So you need to kind of be strategic about how you're going to apply. What I mean by that is it's there are lots of project lists, but then you can't really contribute to all of them in that short period of time, which is 1 month. And so you go over them, you check the project that has most of the skills that you know you have first. That's what you should think about. These skills, does it align with me? What is your goal actually? What do you want to get out of this? What is your goal apart from the internship? Okay, do you want to also improve your skills? Because working on something, you have the skills, you've learned all of this, but doing it improves that skill. So you need to put all of this down, you need to think about it, and then you check the requirements for these skills and then the experience level. You go over them and then you compare, and then you know if you are going to work on that project or you select something else. Another thing is checking the project description so you would know if it's something you can do. Sometimes you might not really get this is a personal tip for me. You might not really understand okay what the project is talking about, but then you have the skills. You can go and then research about what does this community do, what is this project all about. So you're not really lost. Okay, you have the skills, then what next? If you don't have an idea, then you'll not be able to make a contribution. Most of these projects have documentations, and I would say for open source software projects or open source projects, documentation is mostly the source of truth. Everything that you need to know, it's there. Usually they are long, but then you have to learn how to read documentations. So for me, when I picked the project that I worked on as an intern, Debian, I went over the project list. I would just show that here. So this is the project that I worked on as an intern. Debian images testing with OpenQA. I'll just say a little bit about Debian. It is building the universal operating system, and it's volunteer driven. The software is 100% free and has open source distribution, and it is based on Linux. Now, if you check the skills description and impacts on intern experience level, for me, when I went through this project list, there are other projects as you can see them. I felt this aligned more to me, from quality assurance to using Git, Python, Perl. You can see nice to have. It wasn't compulsory, but it was nice to have. I didn't have so much knowledge about Perl, but then is a programming language, and I believe it's something that, as far as you know the basics of programming, you could go and check out the programming language, and then it was nice to have, and you didn't really need to be an expert. And then you can see Debian installation images, desktop environments in Linux, communication in English. You can see what was required and required. Oh, I have those, and then it's preferred to have these and then this is nice to have. And I weighed all of this, okay? It's not like I have everything, but I had some of it, and I would be able to learn the others, even learn it along the way with the project description. You can spend your extra time, maybe when your contributions are being reviewed, you don't just sit and do nothing. You look for stuff to do to improve the project further. Doesn't really need to be what's listed in the project. You get to know more about the community, the organization, what it's all about. So there are other projects. I would say another example for me is that I've contributed to the Git project and also Linux or and also Linux. I would say for this, I had the skills. I've applied before. You don't need to, know everything the first time. It's more of like an experience. I've applied 3 times. I got it the third time. And I won't say because, oh, I became a guru. That's not the reason. Because it's also competitive. You have others that are going to be applying for this same internship, the same project also. You have to put that in mind. I knew I could do this, and then I also knew I could work on this. But then I picked one that I focused my energy on. There are people that can pick two and work on two project contributions at the same time. That is also great. Once you've been able to pick a project, in the project description, you would see how to join the community. There are different modes of or different platforms for communication, open source. For example, Zulip, some use email list, and IRC chats. So you might get to be using some of these for the first time, not the usual ones people would use. They are going to be open source softwares. And then when you do that, you will introduce yourself to the community. You don't just start contributing. Okay, you gave instructions of what's the first thing to do. But immediately you have an interest, you would send a message to the public chat channel, whatever means they're using, to make yourself known. So whoever that's going to be the mentor, people involved, they're going to see it, they're going to notice you. And then you can go on to completing your first task. Now that you've made yourself known, you introduce yourself as an Outreachy applicant, then for most projects, they're going to have tags for newcomers. You're going to see things like good first issues, newcomers, beginner friendly, and there are smaller tasks which enables you to understand the contribution process, the workflow process for that project. You might not really need to have a deep knowledge of the project in order to do this. So when you have been able to make a contribution or start a contribution, you would have to record this. It's either going to be a merge request or a pull request of some sort, a link that you're going to fill as your contributions on the Outreachy website. You can go and edit it, but you just have to make sure that you're putting it down. For me, I also had a document where I kept track of myself, what I'm doing, the contributions that I started, and you're also going to include description of what that your contribution is about. It's not like, okay, I created a made request for so and so task. It needs a little description because people are going to be reviewing it. My tip for this stage is to make progressive contributions. Start small and then you work your way up. You could do contributions from um, grammar errors, broken links, you just scan through. And then for some projects, you specify how you would do a first contribution, steps that you have to follow to make that your first contribution, and then you go and tackle other tasks. So you shouldn't just focus on I want to do this large task that's so complex. Yeah, but then you're wasting time because it's in a 1 month period. You've not been able to show to the community that yes, you are capable. Maybe you have not been able to communicate in the chat and all of that. You just want to show that yeah, you're a guru. It's not really advisable. And if you look at it, if you're someone that wants to assess people that want to work with you, are you going to just you're going to pick the person that oh you did this big task or someone that did it progressively and was communicating at the same time. You did a small task, was made second. It's showing that you understand the workflow, the process, and then you were able to communicate and engage in the community chat. It shows that you're community oriented, you are helping others out. It's not just about the competition, it's about bringing in new people also. You need to think about all of these. All of this comes together for the selection. Another thing we shouldn't forget is AI policy. Of course, this is the AI age. People are using AI, but then some projects do not want you to use AI to complete your task, or they allow some use of AI, but then you need to disclose it. Do not make contributions that you cannot explain, that you do not understand, and also respect the project guidelines on their AI policy use. Working with mentors. Mentors at this time, they're evaluating you, not necessarily it being at the final stage. How are you helping others in the community? Your work you'll be contributing to their GitHub repo or GitLab, wherever the project is being hosted. And your work is going to get reviewed. The way you communicate, the way you collaborate with others, they look at this. And we should not forget that mentors are also voluntary. Make sure you are respectful to your mentors, to other contributors, the way you communicate. And another thing is you should not forget to don't be afraid to ask questions and always ask it publicly in the project channel. If they're using a mailing list or an RSC chat, a public channel, wherever it is, ask your questions there. It makes it faster for you to get your your question, your issue resolved, because you might see someone that has encountered that issue before and is willing to help you, or contributors that are not your mentors. So the community, people in the community can help you quickly, and then your issue is resolved. And whatever way that you think about it, the contribution phase, you just got introduced to open source, you're contributing, you join the community, it's an opportunity to grow and learn, even if it feels competitive. It is an opportunity to learn and grow. So if you're having any issue or whatever thing that you need to have to message mentors about, use their preferred mode of communication. This is also going to be in the project description. So now you know how to make your first contribution, introducing yourself to the community, and what to do to prepare yourself before the contribution phase as you wait. And at the end, you've recorded your contributions, there is going to be a final application to be sent. So applicants are required to create a final application for each outreach project they apply to. Only applicants that record a contribution to a project will be able to create a final application for that project. The same way you wrote essays for the initial application, for the final application, you also have essay questions that you are going to submit with your contributions that you've made. All of this would have entry forms, just the way the initial application was. I'm going to ask you about past experience with this community. So be truthful. Have you been in the community before? Have you encountered them apart from the internship? Have you done anything? Have you been a past applicant and stuff like that? I don't believe is any means of discriminating anyone. I applied to Outreachy 3 times. I got it on the third time. So for the final application, I always mentioned, oh, I am hearing about this organization for the first time. Even the internship that I got from Debian, it was the first time knowing about what the Debian project was. Then the next question, past experience with other communities, whatever open source communities you've had experience with, you put in the information. And then relevant projects. Please describe any relevant project that helped you gain skills you will use in this project. Talk about what knowledge you gained from working on them. Include links where possible. This is also very essential. You include links where possible. We're not just going to be talking about, okay, you know this, you've done this. Include links. If you don't have links, that's still okay. Then have optional section for people that want to also apply for Google Summer of Code. And then the final one, Outreachy internship project timeline. When working on your project timeline, it is essential to break down your project into smaller tasks that can be worked on over the course of the internship. Carefully review the project description to familiarize yourself with the provided tasks and milestones. The reason I'm reading this out is for some projects, like it says, you read the project description and then you're able to create a project timeline. You're doing this yourself. And then you could also ask the project mentors what they are expecting. Most of the time, the project description makes you know the goal and the outcome they are expecting from you. So you put it in a bi-weekly timeline. Okay, every 2 weeks, you intend to do this. You submit a report. The end of this week, you'd make a presentation about this, or you would have completed this one. So you have to draft all of this out. Of course, you're not able to do it except you started working on the project, contributing to the project, and understanding the project. So that's why it's essential for you to work your way up with the contributions from small tasks to medium tasks and then large tasks. Don't just go for a large task. Oh, you know you have this skill and then you're looking for the hardest thing to do. Learn to familiarize yourself by doing the little things, reading the project description, the community documentation also at your free time. Once you have all of this, make sure not to miss the contribution deadline for final application. It is essential. If you just applied for the initial application and then you're in this limbo phase, the waiting period, or right now is the contribution phase for you, make sure to prepare. You check past projects, you what projects that you're interested in. Another thing is it's not certain that even if this community or organization they've been applying, okay, then in this round they are going to apply. So it's 50-50. You keep that in mind. And then you're looking at most of the projects. Oh, there's a common skill, Python, JavaScript. So you already learned this before, and you could spend the time before contribution starts to brush up your skills. Make your first contribution to an open source project, good first issue. I'm going to make a video about that, how to make your first contribution to open source. And then another thing for non-code non-code projects, you would see when we went over it, the like illustration, technical documentation, and all of that. But then you need to know how to use Git. Either it's on GitHub or GitLab that your project will be using, but learning the Git workflows would make it easy for you to flow the project because most projects are they're either using GitHub or GitLab. You learn how to clone the project. You have to learn how to create your own branch, make your changes, and make a pull request or a merge request. If you're applying for the Outreachy or a similar program contribution phase, this is where the real work happens, where you get to show your skill. You might feel like, oh, you're not so good, you're not a guru yet. But then this is a learning experience. You see that you could even do more than you thought you could. So this application stage is usually the same. There are other open source software internships, regardless of the outcome. This is a good experience. You can apply again. If you don't get it the first time, apply the second time. There are other similar open source software internships. By doing this, you're already getting the experience. So subscribe if you want to understand more about open source software and similar internship opportunities. Next up, I'll show you how to use Git, what it actually is, and make your first contribution.